I was also just curious. You mentioned sort of like being in nature reminds you of why the land is important to you. I was wondering if you could like expand on that. Like, why is the land important to you?
Okay. So for me, the land is important to me because it's, I've come to, well, I should have already known this, but I am constantly reminded of how, like, there's nothing we can do without the land. And it's kind of like, oh, but we live in a house. And I'm like, yes, and that house is on the land. Or, oh, well, we can fly and like take off in planes. And like, yes, but those planes have to take off from the land. Or you go swimming and that water sits on top of the land. Um, and like, this is something that, because for my work, I have to do, well, I don't have to, we should be doing our land acknowledgements. And we've been trying to not have them just be like ceremonial or just something that has to happen. And so I really encourage the students as well to reflect more on the land itself and not just, oh, yeah, there's outside and inside, but like, okay, but they're connected, of course. And so for me, like the land is, it's home, even though it might not be home, or this specific land might not be home for everyone or for me, but everyone everywhere has that land as their home, and that is important. Um, to me, the land is also very important because it's where we build all our connections. And so when I was younger, I was very much focused on like I guess it's the physical geography. And now that I'm a little older and I've learned a lot more, I see how the physical geography allows for the human geography to work. So this is where we make our connections. It dictates how we build our lives, how we connect with each other, what we focus around. Do we center around water? Do we center more around trees? Like all of that. And so it just plays an important role that most of the time functions more as a background role, but without it, we're all a little lost. So I think some of the positive ways that my family migration story has impacted my relationship with environmentalism in nature is by allowing me to have access to different types of environments. So, like what I had said before about getting to visit Antigua and seeing what an island country is like. That's not an environment we get here in Ontario. And so it's like, oh, like there's also this tropical type of environment, which has its own beauties, its own challenges, its own benefits. That's really interesting to me. And then I have Canada as a giant country. It also has multiple different ecosystems in itself. But for me here in Mississauga, like these are the ones that I'm also familiar with. And so I've gotten to see the difference and compare and contrast and see what I like, what I maybe don't like. And then also how these two different places also deal with similar or completely different environmental challenges. And so I think it's been really eye-opening to me in a way that I wouldn't have had my parents also been born in Canada or not had connections back in Antigua that would allow for that traveling to occur. I also feel like their migration and our migration has affected my relationship with environmentalism and the land in that sense of belonging that you had mentioned earlier too. Um, and that's always been something that in the beginning when I was just learning about environmental issues in general, it wasn't something that I had thought of. I was very much like Canadian-based environmentalism, I guess I could call it. And like, what are the issues here? How are Canadians dealing or being challenged by these issues? And then as I grew and learned more, it became more of that worldview and linking back to Antigua. And I'm like, oh, these issues don't just exist here in Canada. They're everywhere. And like everyone is dealing with different challenges. And part of it was I didn't know where I wanted to help. Like, do I stay in Canada and help? Should I be helping back in Antigua? Like, is that where I'm supposed to be helping? And what you had said before too about knowing the flora and fauna. I remember driving through Antigua one time and thinking, I can't name a single plant here. Like, unless it's a palm tree, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's native here. I don't know what's invasive here. And even if I wanted to move here and start building my own life here, in terms of my environmental knowledge, it'd be like starting from scratch. Like, what is the soil type? What species are native? And it kind of brings up like those identity issues or disconnect, and like, am I really Antiguan, or do I have the right, or is it my place to even do environmental work here? The last thing I just wanted to say was I also have come across a lot of opportunities or moments where there is another Black woman specifically in an environmental space. So maybe I'm at a like team retreat or a conference or something like that. And I get approached and we exchange words on how important it is to see each other in these spaces, because the two of us will be standing together and we can take a look around and we might be the only two people there, or there might be more of us, but we can clearly see that we are the minority. And so my identity and my environmentalism, like, I have become aware of how it's not just me. Like, similar people that share similar identities to me are in this same position. And even without trying, we do act kind of like as a beacon for each other, and that support for each other, and that representation for each other. And so I feel like that is the kind of representation I'm more okay with. Like, I don't want to be your poster child for how diverse your company is, but if I can help someone else feel like, oh, this is a spot I should be in, and like I made the right decisions and I'm comfortable with where I am, that to me is the better feeling there.